Hey barbecue fans, welcome to a beautiful evening on the Frankenboo Ranch. Okay, so tonight I've got a really special thing I'm going to do. I've been looking for this cut of meat for quite some time and I was finally able to get my hands on it. What we have tonight that we're going to cook tomorrow is Thors Hammer. This is a beef shank and this particular one is 10.5 pounds. So basically what we're looking at here is a leg of cow. And I'm going to wind up cooking this thing just like I would a brisket. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop the cryo back on this thing. I'm going to trim it up and I'm going to season it. I'm going to put it in our pan and I'm going to let it sit overnight. The reason I want to let it sit overnight is because it's a very lean muscle. There's not a lot of fat in it. So I want the seasoning to penetrate into the beef as much as possible. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it here and get going with this thing. So this is... You can see here, we got Thors Hammer. And if you guys look into these things, I said 10.5 pounds to 8.5 pounds. This is enough for about 10 people. Okay, it's huge. I've only found one retailer online that sells these, and this is, I don't even remember who I got it from. Hoffman Estates is what it says on the tag, but that's not who it was. It is a massive chunk of meat. And when they do get them in, they sell out really, really quick. So you can see it's a big piece of meat with a lot of meat on it. And what makes this cut of meat so fun and so great to cook and eat is the bone seasons up the meat, or it flavors the meat as you're cooking it. So I'm gonna just go ahead and just get under here and cut the silver skin off of a lot of this. Now what I'm gonna do after I cut the silver skin off is I'm going to tie it up. I'm going to put some string around it to keep it from falling apart while I cook it. So we got this here. Take this off. A lot of people, if you research these online, a lot of people won't. They won't trim them. I've always said I think the silver skin is a barrier. I know the silver skin is a barrier for the rubs, and it doesn't let it come through. And you can see it's really lean. This is going to be a great cut of meat when we're all said and done to cook this thing. So as I'm trimming here, I'll tell you guys what I'm going to do with it. Like I said, I'm going to do it just like I would a brisket. I'm going to cook it starting tomorrow morning at 275 degrees, and then I'm going to cook it open for 4 hours as my dogs are going crazy because I've got food back here and they think they're starving. Crazy little bastards, get out of here. Go away. That's not bad. I'm not going to trim too much off the back, I don't think. I just want the front. Let's get under here, see what we got. I'm going to cook it at 275 degrees for 4 hours. And then at the 4 hour mark, I'm going to take it and I'm going to wrap it in tinfoil. I'm going to put some beef base in it, and we're going to let it continue cooking. Now, you can put vegetables in it. I'm not going to serve this with vegetables. I'm going to serve this meat with probably another side of meat. Something good, because this looks amazing. I've been dying to cook this thing for quite some time now. Been sitting in my freezer for about a month, trying to find the right time to cook it and get the right amount of people over here, because I can't eat this whole thing by myself. What do you boys want? It's not time yet. It'll be ready tomorrow. All right, so you can see the really pretty redness of this meat. Now, you got to remember, this is a leg. This is a beef shank, so it is a working muscle. So obviously it's moving the cow around, so it's not going to be very fatty. So that's why we want to be able to add as much flavor as possible. I probably don't have to tie this thing up. It looks like it's going to stay together pretty well. One thing we are going to do when we cook it is I'm going to wrap the bone in tinfoil because I don't want the bone to burn. I want it to cook nicely. So we can see we've got a really nice cut of meat here. So let's go ahead, move this out of the way. Let's season this bad boy up. All right, so I'm going to start it off with some Lowry's. And now, like a brisket, I'm going to let this sit out overnight. This is going to take all night. I'll stick it back in the refrigerator. I could probably let it just sit out here, but out here on the ranch I got wild animals, and I don't want to come back to a completely skinned bone tomorrow with no meat on it, because that's exactly what will happen. The coyotes will come out and eat this thing alive. So we've got our Lowry's, which is going to give us our nice sodium that we want in the beef. Then I'm going to hit it with my Dizzy Pig Dizzy Dust, because that is my favorite rub. It goes good with everything. Now you can put a binder on this if you want. This thing's been sitting out thawing for a day. Not out, but it's been thawing for a day, so it's nice and wet still. So I don't feel the need for a binder on this thing or anything. We're just going to let it go. You notice I'm not really seasoning out the back of it, because that's the bone and the rest of the fat there, what little we have. Okay, that's good there. And then I'm going to use some of our fun sponsor from Flavor Seed, their Bovine Bold, which is a great rub for beef. All right, let's just get this in there. And like I said, we're going to let this sit. We're going to let this sit overnight, because we really have no fat to render on this thing. It's just a whole lot of meat, and we're going to let this soak in really nice. All right. You know what? I am going to tie up the top of this real fast with some string, because it looks like the meat is going to fall off the side here if I don't. So let's brace that thing up. Let's get rid of this. And I've got my scissors and string. And you can see here the meat looks like it could fall off the bone. I don't want it to, so I'm just going to tie it up real quick like you would a roast, a standing rib roast, a prime rib, something like that. Just going to give it one wrap, because I don't really think we need more than that. Tie that on there nicely. And then we'll just remove that before we cook it. And you know what? I'm going to give it another one too. Why not? All right. Give it one more down here. All right. Just cut off the excess. There we go. Now, I'm going to take it, I'm going to put it in the pan, and I'm hoping it'll stand up upright so I can cook it like this tomorrow, which it probably won't. So we'll lay it down sideways, and we'll go from there. So there we have it. Our Thors Hammer is all prepped up, ready to go. I'm going to let it sit out overnight, and tomorrow morning, probably around 10 a.m., we're going to fire this thing, because I imagine it'll probably take right around 7 hours, just like a brisket to cook. So we're going to go ahead and let this thing season up overnight, and we'll be back in the morning to fire the cooker and get this thing cooking. Hey guys, all right, so here we are morning after we seasoned our giant chunk of meat, Thors Hammer, and we can see that the rubs have set in really nicely. I do not think this thing is going to stand up, because when I try to stand it up, it falls over. The bone on the end is not standing, not working correctly. So I'm just going to leave it laying on its side. Now, real quick, we'll go back over the cooking instructions that we're going to do today. Like I said, I'm going to treat this like a brisket. I seasoned it last night. I let it set out of the refrigerator overnight so the rub can penetrate as deep as possible. And I also tied some string around it, because I trimmed it up, took a little bit of that silver skin off. So to keep the meat from actually falling off the bone, I tied it up. So we've got our smoker set up for 275 cooking. I'm going to fire it now for 4 hours, and every 30 minutes I'm going to get beef base, and I'm going to spray beef base over it. And then at the 4-hour mark, I'm going to wrap it and put it back on for another 3 hours for a total of 7 hours cooking, and we should be right exactly where we want to be. So let's go ahead and fire this thing up. Alrighty, so there we go, and we will be back in 4 hours to see where we're at. See you guys back in a bit. Okay guys, here we are at hour 4 of our beef shank, aka Thors Hammer beef cook. And right now the temperature is right around 150 degrees. We've got, if I hit the bone, it goes a little bit colder, but we're at 150, 155. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this thing up. So let's go ahead and take this out. Now you can see in the bottom of the pan, there's not a lot of juice, because this is a relatively lean piece of meat. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pour a whole can of beef consomme in there, just because I like the really good heavy beef flavor. Now, one other thing I'm going to point out is the exposed bone. You guys can see the bone right here. If you have a big bone, you can get some of these will have, 6 inches of a bone sticking out. You're going to want to wrap that in tin foil because that is going to, if you cook it longer than 4 hours exposed, it'll burn, and you don't want that burn flavor. But we just got a short one here. We're only 4 hours. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. There we go. All right, get a nice tight seal. I'll put this back onto the cooker. So there we go. And we're going to be back in 3 hours, plus or minus, depending on where the temperature lands. And we'll carve it up and take a look at it, see how good it is. So we'll be back in a bit. Okay, guys, here we are at the end of our beef shank Thors Hammer cook. And let me tell you, this thing smells amazing right now. So let's go ahead and pull it off and take a look and see what we got. All right, so like I said, what we did, we cooked it just like we would cook a brisket. Put it in 275 for 4 hours. Then we wrapped it, cooked it for another 3, and here we go. We've got this amazing looking piece of meat. I mean, look at this thing. It just screams incredible. All right, so we are exactly at 203 where we're supposed to be. 203, 206, beautiful, 204. And look at this. That just looks amazing. So you can see I laid it, the cartilage fat side down, and you can see the reason I tied up the meat. If I wouldn't have tied it up, it would have all fallen over and fallen off the bone, which it's doing, and it will do as soon as I cut the strings. So there we have it. This is what they affectionately call Thors Hammer. I'm going to let it rest before I play with it any further than this for a couple hours and then do some damage to this thing. So like I said, if you guys get a chance to pick one of these up, I highly recommend it. It smells amazing. I really can't wait to try it. They're not super expensive. You might pay $80 for a 10-pound beef shank, but pick one up. Give it a shot. They're fantastic, and it smells amazing. Really simple to cook. So there you have it, guys. Until next time, keep on smoking it.